Hello and welcome to Berlinale Meets Berlinale Shorts. Today we're going to talk about the art of cinematography, and I'm very happy that I have four wonderful cinematographers here with me. Please welcome Gerard Ortín Castellví. He did the cinematography as well as the directing for the film Agrilogistics. Then we have Samy. He's the cinematographer of Will My Parents Come to See Me, which is directed by Arbugaev. And then brother and sister, Evgenia Arbugaeva and Maxim Arbugaev. They co-directed and both did the cinematography for Haulout. Hello. Nice to see you all in different places.
Everyone.
So maybe we start straight away with watching a clip. First of all, for the audience to know who is who. So, Stephen, where are you at the moment? Can you wave?
Yes.
And you're calling in from?
Egypt. Cairo.
And Gerard, where are you at the moment?
I'm in London. Hi, nice to meet you, everyone.
And Evgenia and Maxim. Evgenia, where are you?
Hi, everyone. I'm in London as well.
And Maxim?
Yeah, hello, everybody. I'm in Moscow now.
Okay, great. So we're going to watch one clip after the other and get to know you and your work a little bit better. The first clip is a short excerpt from the beginning of Will My Parents Come to See Me? And don't be surprised, it starts with a black frame, but the audio is already running. So that's the beginning of Will My Parents Come to See Me, which is a film about the last day of a prisoner before his execution. So we accompany him through that day together with the prison guard. Stephen, with every film, location is very important. Also in this film, of course. Can you tell us a little bit about the location scouting and what was important for you when you chose the locations?
Yeah, actually, location plays a very important role in the film. So it's not only about cinematography and having good lights and things like that, but location helps the cinematographer a lot of how he's going to approach the film. And yeah, I only had one day scouting like the first location. And then you have to see the location first and then be inspired of its atmosphere and also from the technical part you see the windows and how you're gonna use the lights and things like that, and also imagine have a pre-imagination of how you're going to shoot it. Also, what was interesting in this film that we had the chance to shoot in a real prison. So that was a little bit scary, but yeah, and we had very limited time. And we didn't have, no, actually we had one chance to scout, and we had 2 hours only to shoot at the actual shooting. So, yeah.
You mean the whole film, that all the scenes that take place in the prison are shot within 2 hours?
No, actually, no. Just a few shots were taken in the actual prison, and then the inside of the cell and things like that was in another place. We built it.
Okay, so you did have a studio set or some kind of a built set in addition to the actual prison?
A very simple room we did. That we shot in it. Nothing fancy at all.
Yeah. Yeah, and I shot in a prison once as well, and it's like there are locks all the time. There are so many restrictions, and especially time. So I'm really impressed how you made it in this short time to shoot under these conditions.
Actually, the key thing here is like good planning. If you like, we wrote every shot, and having a good plan is what helped in shooting in such a situation. So yeah, always planning is the key element of in filmmaking.
And in the prison, how many takes could you do because of the limited amount of time? What
Like
was the ratio?
We had like 3 takes of shot, but yeah, it wasn't that complicated. I think the acts know the role, and it wasn't actually, the actual shots weren't that complicated for us to take lots of scenes. So yeah, in general, the film is really simple, nothing over the top, and I think that's how makes it strong in a way. How simple.
And I think it shows, the preparation totally shows, because every shot is so carefully composed, and it's amazing how you frame things and how you use the architecture to compose the image.
Yeah, like on the other hand, the other days we had like in each scene, like we had a day to shoot it, so we had fairly good time, and that really helped a lot. We had time to like fine tune everything in the frame and discuss every frame and every lens choice, and I had time to do the lighting. Without time, we wouldn't have that luxury to like produce that these frames and these shots. So and yeah, we shot like nine straight continuous days nonstop.
Sorry, 9?
9 straight days.
Okay. And Gerard, Evgenia, and Maxim, if you have any questions, comments, remarks, jump in. Feel free to.
Yeah, I had one question. Do you follow the storyboard, and how many kind of times you had a kind of improvisations during the shooting?
Actually, in this film, it was a lot, because you know, we didn't have that fancy gear or equipment or lightings, and like this, everything we did was like really simple and without any we didn't have any crew, like just me and the director, and like I had an assistant. I had to show him the basics of the tripods and things like that. So we faced many problems. So these problems actually made sometimes limitation of how we're going to shoot it, and we had to be somehow flexible of how we're going to like make this new vision, or how we're going to shoot this, like the thing we imagine how we're going to like how this with this limitation, how we're going to like make another shot but still serves the story. That was actually a lot of time we faced this thing. Like we had to find a solution for the limitations we had.
And it was, if I'm correct, the first time you were in charge completely of the cinematography. It was the first time as a cinematographer in charge for you.
This was my first experience of shooting a film. Yeah, there's a unique story behind this. It's like I wasn't intended to shoot. I wasn't intended to be the director of photography of this film in the first place, but I was intended to go as a first camera assistant or the focus puller. But the original DP had problems having the security pass from Egypt going to Somalia, and I had it. So he ended up with me like going and shooting the film. So it was a whole new experience to me, like going to Somalia and then being the director of photography and communicating with the director, communicating with the actors. And yeah, it was really a unique experience for me, and somehow what was really unique is I enjoyed the process. It wasn't that stressful. I felt like I'm delivering the vision of the director, and really this felt great while shooting this film.
Yeah, it's congratulations.
Thank you. And somehow, as artists, and I guess you all know this, it's really hard to be convinced of your own work. Like you imagine something and then bringing it to reality is a really hard process. You're not always sure of how you're going to make it, but then seeing the results somehow promising is something very rewarding.
Yeah, no, it's very, very impressive cinematography for sure.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
Sorry, Stephen. I was just wondering, because it's impressive how you're saying it was such a small crew, just 3 of you, really. So did you use any external lighting, or did you use just the available light? Because the light is beautiful in the film.
So it was a mix of both. Actually, like mainly my main source of light is the natural light, but I had like these two 600 watts light. Only this is the only light I had, and small tubes. And like I begin with like composing the frame and see what the available light I have, and then with this light that I have, the artificial light, I like add certain touches or like add some harsh light in that area or that part. But yeah, it was somehow also challenging. Like I had like in this location I had. It was a very big room, and you had lots of windows. And somehow I made the light by like opening some windows and closing some windows, and like fine tuning every window to reach that lighting in the end. So nothing fancy at all was during this film. So yes, somehow this was a challenge, but I guess in the end. You have to see the facilities you have and how you're going to use it to serve the final story, even if it's not that fancy.
So, if there are no questions straight away, then I would say we move to the next film. And this, how to serve the story, I think that's something that runs through all the films and is always part of good cinematography. How does the image serve the story? Gerard, we're going to see an excerpt from your film. It's from the first half of the film, also 1 minute from Agrilogistics. Let's watch it first. So you did a few films. I'm not sure how many you will tell us about food, the production of food, the sort of artificiality in the way we produce food these days. This film takes place in a greenhouse, in a fully automatized, whatever. You have to tell us what the exact term is. Greenhouse, and again the question about, and there are two halves in the film. There are two kinds of greenhouses. Can you tell us about the location scouting? What was important for you when you scouted the location or when you picked these two locations?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've done, let's say I'm conducting a long-term research, which is it's about food regimes, but more generally agricultural regimes. And this is the second film. The first one would look more at technologies of food produced in the lab. The process was basically, in my case, it started in 2018. And back then I was contacting the companies that produce this machinery, these automated self-driven vehicles, these machines that employ machine learning and kind of like visual recognition technologies. And through them, I would end up visiting the greenhouses. So it was through them, let's say, that I got into the greenhouses. There's more than one greenhouse in the first half, which is also part of the motif of the films, that I mix flower production with food production, and there's a reason for that. But yeah, I would say one of the key elements here was to see if I could understand the greenhouse as a cinematic device, and if so, to see if I could use my camera as a sensor among sensors. That is to say, to use the vehicles of the greenhouse sometimes as vehicles for my camera. So here we saw two examples that precisely don't do that, but as you know, there are some other moments where the camera somehow travels through the vehicles that are used for agricultural production.
And the cameras in the greenhouse, not your cameras, but the cameras of the greenhouse, what is their purpose? Why are they there?
So yeah, they have different purposes. This vehicle that you see at the end is called the plantalizer. It's equipped with 3 pairs of stereoscopic cameras, and it moves autonomously. To do so, it travels through the heating pipes. As you know, the heating pipes were introduced like halfway the 20th century in the greenhouses, and sometimes are used to carry trolleys for pickers. Now, this kind of company has that has made this robot has used these existing rails as the means to move this vehicle. So this vehicle is moving autonomously and is collecting data from the tomato. So basically it's collecting data that informs the degree of ripeness, the level of, redness of the tomatoes. That is fed as a data set into the greenhouse, which in turn regulates itself, the panels on the ceiling, the nutrients, the temperature. So in a way, we could say that the tomato produces an image that in turn affects its own growth, if you know what I mean. And the camera is mediating that process.
Wow, this is fascinating, because it works like the eye of a human, that it interprets reality and then brings it to the brain to process what it captured.
Exactly. So the tomato is entangled with the machinery of the greenhouse, but the images, let's say, one difference with a camera, a cinema camera, is that those images never reach the human eye. So they become immediately data to fit an algorithm.
Yeah. And I know, Evgenia, I think you had a question for Gerard already.
Yeah, I was fascinated by the camera movement also, and I was wondering what decisions you made in terms of, because in first part it was very automatic, but now hearing you talking about it, do I understand right that then the camera was actually placed on one of the machineries, or?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes. So let's say I used the camera several times. I mean, in the film I chose like specific moments. I use the camera in the actual platforms, logistical platforms that move either plans or move cameras that film the plans. So yeah, that was one of the strategies that I was interested in exploring.
And then in the second part, in this kind of apocalyptic, futuristic part, dreamlike, then the movement is very different, right? Can you talk a little bit about your decisions there?
So these are, let's say, I guess to understand it, it's important to say that I filmed it with a difference of almost 2 years, you know, for different reasons, funding reasons, different reasons. I think in my head, like they both respond to this premise of understanding the greenhouse as a cinematic set, as a film set, but in very different ways. No? So this second part is much more about, you know, understanding the greenhouse as a permeable space where there's no inside or outside, where, you know, in the first part, energetic inputs are strictly regulated. No? So even for us to be in the greenhouse, we have to go through a process of sterilization. The camera has to get sterilized because any kind of foreign living agent can affect the whole crop. No? So, whereas in the second part, it felt very different. Like it felt more like being in the, in a different territory, like in a kind of wild territory, where the architecture was not so present. So I used different strategies. There's one strategy that was inspiring for me, which I learned from Canadian filmmaker Phil Hoffman, which I had the privilege to meet once. And he was saying, framing animals with the viewfinder is not so different from surrounding them with a fence. They're both, in a way, forms of domestication. Now, I don't fully agree. I think that domestication is a very complex term. Sometimes it doesn't happen in one direction, but I would say there were times where I would, let's say, decide on a kind of position of the camera that would frame a particular part of this greenhouse in the second half that you're asking me about, and then also limit the movement of the animals within the greenhouse. So playing both with the, say, geographical framing on a flat kind of level, and on a much more vertical level with the framing of my camera, kind of like playing with these two things. But yeah, I was experimenting a bit with these ideas. I didn't have like a clear premise on how to use the camera in the second half.
And is it a set or is it a real place? Or
so this location is an old horticultural school that used to be a training facility for agricultural engineers, often sent to the colonies in the Netherlands. It's in a different location, Drenthe, which is not the main, let's say, intensive agricultural cluster of the Netherlands. And it's been abandoned for many years, and say vegetation has taken over. Now, initially, my idea was to stage it, so bring the animals, you know, and kind of create a set of conditions for this kind of performatic shooting to take place. Now, as you know, often what happens is that your fictional idea is not so fictional. So I contacted two let's say, animal handlers. One was a local farmer. And then I asked him, like, can you bring the animals into the greenhouse? You know, I thinking this is a crazy idea maybe for this farmer. But it turned out that he told me, like, yeah, I do it on a weekly basis. I go there with my donkey and they love it, you know, they walk around. I was like, okay, I'm not so original, you know, like this my fictional idea, dystopian, is already like the routine of this farmer, let's say. So yeah, it's staged, but there is like certain elements that already happen somehow in a normal basis there.
Is there another question or comment for Agrilogistics? No? Then we come back to it later. And I think it's fascinating how you had to sort of sterilize the camera, and shooting in certain conditions means also taking care of your equipment. And I'm sure Maxim and Evgenia, you have similar experiences when shooting in the freezing cold of the Arctic. So we moved to Haulout, and again watch I think it's from the beginning of the film, a minute excerpt, and then talk about it.
Сентября, плотный туман, пока их не видно.
So before we go into the location scouting and this particular location, maybe Maxim and Evgenia, you tell us a bit, is it your first time that you're collaborating? Because I believe, Evgenia, you come from still photography, and Maxim not only has a background in ice hockey, but also in moving images. So Maxim, is that your first collaboration? And how come, if it is, how come you collaborated on this film?
Well, as a filmmakers, yeah, that's the first collaboration. But Evgenia, well, we worked together in different projects, and I was helping Evgenia in her photo projects. And big thanks to her, because she kind of bring to the art, to the filmmaking. Because at the first project. It was in 2012. I just finished the hockey career, and Evgenia invited me as assistant to the Arctic, and that's how my story starts. Yeah, but in this project, Haulout, yeah, that was the first collaboration. But for me, it's not the first one, because we always, as a sister and brother, we're always exchanging ideas, and so we kind of used to it, combining, our.
We spend a lot of time together in the travels, so it feels like we've been doing this, for many years.
And you grew up in the Arctic, is that correct?
Yes, we're actually from a very small town called Tiksi. It's on the shore of Laptev Sea in Republic of Yakutia in the Russian Far East. So in a way, this location and environment is very familiar to us. And my work and Maxim's work also very often located in the Russian Arctic. And it's such a, this region is so full of stories. It's like a treasure box of stories. So we just keep returning almost every year. And in fact, I think we are now, I'm living in London, Max in Moscow, but it's so much in our system that we just feel like we need to go back. If I don't spend the summer in the Arctic, I feel like something is off.
And Haulout is a specific term, which is when the walruses go on shore, when they go on land, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm sorry, spoiler alert. In this film, we will see, I think, how many thousands of walruses arriving?
100,000.
How many?
100,000.
Yeah. And so that's far too many. Maybe you just want to briefly explain why it's far too many, what happened there.
So basically, this kind of gatherings, historically they've always been there, and in fact that's why the Chukchi indigenous people of Chukotka, Chukchi people, they've located their settlements around this beaches where walruses haul out. But in the past it was 10, maybe 15,000, and increasingly with a warming climate, there is just simply not enough ice in the sea. So walruses, they haul out usually on the floating ice. They rest. They feed. But because there's no ice, and in 2020 where we were shooting, there was zero ice in Chukchi Sea. So they have no choice, and they all haul out, which is coming out on the beach. And because they've been doing such a long journey without rest on the ice, they come out. They arrive very weak and exhausted, and so there is a lot of trampling and suffocation, etc. So, and that year was specifically a record-breaking number of deaths on the beach. So yeah, it was definitely a very hard thing to watch. Probably the hardest, at least for me, from the work that I've been doing in the region.
Yeah, and I think when we watched it, it's sort of the impact of climate change. I think I've never seen it so clearly and so devastatingly, also emotionally, the impact of the melting of the ice caps and the ice. And yeah, it's very, very touching. And maybe the question about location scouting doesn't make too much sense because it is that location. Or was there a process of scouting or looking for places involved in making this film?
Max, do you want to?
We were before the Haulout project. We were there in this small hut a year before. Evgenia, she had her own project called the North. So it's the project about the Russian Arctic, and we were traveled around the Russian Arctic in several parts. And the Chukotka was one of the location, and we went there just make a photos, not the video. And in this expedition a year before, we met our protagonist Maxim, and we didn't plan to come back and film him as a protagonist. Then we, after 6 or 7 months, when we were in Moscow, in Russia, and Evgenia were in London, we were just had a chat and kind of decided to go there to visit Maxim in coming season. So we just pack our equipment, call to Maxim, and ask him if he is okay if we come, and we'll capture and observe his work. And so we just pack our equipment and stuff and went there.
And we
were just open for the kind of incoming ideas.
Was it just the two of us, or did you have somebody for sound, or you did the sound yourself?
No, we were just two. I record the sound, sometimes noises of walruses, the sea. And we both work as a camera and as a directors. So it's kind of a tandem.
Yeah.
Even if we wanted to have more people, it would be very difficult to fit into this little hut. So I think it was like we were maximum capacity there.
It's very, very small.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. And Gerard and Stephen, jump in if you have questions or comments.
I mean, I maybe have a question. Yeah, first of all, like, congratulations. I found it fascinating, both films. But I was interested at some point on the change of scales also. And now that Anna is bringing this question about how to render visible climate change, which is very challenging sometimes, I wonder, if this was an idea that you had already in the approach of the cinematography, that then we clearly see in the montage, but I was quite fascinated by this radical change of scales in which it seems as important the kind of close presence of the walrus to the understanding of them as a kind of mass. And I wanted to ask you about this, about scales, let's say, in relation to cinematography.
Yeah, I mean, the scale, because for us, it was very important to show exactly the scale, so that it is abnormal. This is something that is, just to show that the beach is packed and there is no way for them to move. So, and the only way to show it was with drone, and we were actually we were really battling with this idea of using drone because we wanted to keep it quite, continuous in a sense of cinematography and kind of keep being in this closed environment. But then we thought, we just need to show it. And so in a way it's kind of, the drone footage, it was just the only way to show it. I wish there was some other way, but it just seemed like it was impossible to shoot it with the camera on the ground.
Were you able to leave the hut once the walruses were there? Because I remember there are shots from afar where we can see the hut and the walruses. So was one of you left out there in the cold, or how did you manage? Or is that a drone as well?
No, during the peak of Haulout, yeah, you cannot go outside. But they have a period during the Haulout. They have a period when they go for food to the feeding spot. It's around 250 kilometers from the shore, so it takes around a week for them to come back to the Haulout. So during this time, I had a chance to go to the village to take some stuff, and also I took my equipments. And we decided with Evgenia, we just kind of separate. Evgenia will be in the hut, stay with the protagonist, and I'll be in the village, which is kind of 15 kilometers away. And every day in the sunrise and sunset, I was driving with the local guys by a quadricycle, and was filming around the Haulout. So that's how we get this footage.
Okay.
Yeah, and at some point we were like, the other Max, the scientist, and I, we were stuck there, and it was, it took longer and longer, and we were like out of water, there was no more heating, and I'm like calling my brother, like, Max, we are like on the last drops here. And Max is like, I'm so sorry, I wish I could, and he's standing there not so far from us, and like, I wish I could deliver supplies to you. We were separated by this mass of walruses, but we couldn't, connect.
But the walruses just left in time then for you?
Well, that's another thing, that in 2020, the walruses come out in large numbers, but they stay for longer time because they're exhausted, so they need to kind of regain their energy. So they stayed longer, and so that's why our supplies were not enough. We didn't anticipate that they will stay so long, and this was a first year in scientist experience as well, when he was like, wow, I've never seen anything like that. So yeah.
And just to finish this off, very pragmatic questions, because batteries run out like crazy when it's cold. I don't know if you had electricity there. Can you tell us a bit about, or if anybody ever wants to shoot in the Arctic, can you give them some good advice how to be able to do that?
Yeah, the temperature during the shooting, temperature was like around plus 5 Celsius degree, sometimes 0. It was not that cold that the batteries can kind of fastly run out. But we had electricity there, a small generator, which is kind of not making a lot of noise. So we charged the batteries, but we were limited a bit. We tried to kind of keep batteries for impressive episodes, for good shots. But we had a lot of time there. We spent there almost 3 months. 3 months, and so we were living with our protagonists during the whole expedition. So we know which shots we like really need, and we were prepared for that.
Okay. And you have a special technique of packing batteries, and what is a good wrap?
Not some special techniques, but you just take your batteries and put inside of your jacket and warming for your body. But when you're not filming, then when you start filming, you just take batteries, put it into the camera, and start filming.
I like this image that the body becomes the heater, the body becomes a battery for the battery to sort of.
Yes.
Your heart needs
right.
to warm the electricity, the equipment.
I think in autumn, and this time it really wasn't, as Mark said, it wasn't cold at all. But the main thing was that this generator that Max mentioned, we were trying to be as quiet and also as having as little impact as we can possibly have on animals, and that's why, raising the drone even was. We learned that it was problematic because they react to the sound, and so that's why Max went away to launch it from other safer place. But also the generator, the sound and smell can scare walruses. So we had to time we were careful with use of batteries, because we could charge only once a week sometimes. So it was all like we were all dependent on, we were living by the clocks of walruses, basically.
Yeah, and that brings me to the time that's running out now in our conversation. I'm really sorry, time flew by. We already have the 45-minute benchmark, jumped over it already. But thank you so much for sharing insight in making of your films. And yeah, we're looking forward to more work of yours. And thanks a lot again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
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 Bye.